Are you curious about the history and stories of West Coast hip hop? Well, here it is. Early hip hop is often seen as a creative expression in response to oppressive conditions experienced by people of color. Rap music in the 1980s was ripe with messages of political awareness, questioning those in power, and instilling racial pride through artists like KRS-One, Public Enemy, and Poor Righteous Teachers. And on the West Coast, there was Paris, Cam, and the Lynch Mob. Style writing, which actually developed before and separate than hip hop music and was connected later, was undoubtedly a form of youth rebellion. Pioneering Black and Latino style writers were very aware that vandalizing and defacing trains and public property could lead to being arrested, but that didn't stop them. Writing was a form of protest and it needed to be expressed for the world to see. The 1996 book Style Writing from the Underground gives first-hand stories from New York style writers who were a part of the development of style writing. Many spoke of being influenced to pick up a marker or spray can as a response to the social conditions around them. New York style writer Coco 144 was quoted as saying, "Naturally, it was a cry, a scream from its streets. In doing this, we got to say something that was a statement. It was something that had to happen, and the train just happened to be the vehicle that we used." These 1960s babies grew up during a time of major social and cultural changes. They saw Vietnam War veterans return home to few opportunities, battling heroin addiction. They watched the rise and attack of activist groups like the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense, and saw protests and rebellions ignite all over the U.S. In the midst of this, Black and Latino youth found a way to be heard that made city officials, law enforcement, and the general public take notice. As style writing and graffiti art spread to other cities like Los Angeles, the youth rebellion element remained, but the people doing the style writing would rapidly change. 30-year veteran, style writer and graffiti artist Cre8 Walker was a part of the early days of style writing in Los Angeles. He shares his thoughts on the changes in representation in graffiti art.
I remember when I was at a yard one day where we used to paint. I was a teenager. This when everything was sort of, a lot of black graffiti artists faded out the picture. Like most black graffiti artists, real talk, started gang banging real heavy. They started selling drugs. And then some people became MCs. A lot of MCs were old school graffiti artists. The ones that we know, like Rocka. Rocka was from a crew called Cre8 to Devastate. He was an old school writer. Black Silver. Silver the Navigator. He used to rhyme with Kool Keith and he rhymed with Ice-T. He was a graffiti writer. You know what I'm saying? His nickname was Tez1 from C2D in West Coast.
Wow.
You know what I'm saying? It's a lot of people. Tane from the Artifact. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, he graffiti writer, you know, but everybody said, hey, let's be part of something that we get recognition for. So some people did it for sport and for the love, and some people did it for a hobby. Some people chose to take the route and say, you know what, I want to do this and survive and live from it and show the world that, hey, I'm an artist like everybody else.
The crack epidemic dramatically hit inner cities all over the U.S., but the city of Los Angeles was especially impacted. In the 1998 book, The Dark Alliance, the CIA, the Contras, and the crack cocaine explosion, reporter Gary Webb detailed how Los Angeles was a testing ground for the deliberate spread of crack cocaine and drug trafficking throughout predominantly black neighborhoods. This epidemic also affected Latino neighborhoods. However, it seemed that black communities were the prime targets. Drug trafficking became the number one money source for many street gangs, both black and Latino. Often not mentioned is that it also fueled an entire anti-drug industry that created more jobs and opportunities for law enforcement. They received an increase in funding for drug task force, special units, and anti-drug campaigns for schools and community groups, and bought more militarized weapons like the battering ram, all in an attempt to end the war on drugs. Before cocaine, Los Angeles street gangs were initially formed as a way to protect their neighborhoods. The worst case scenario would be fistfights or stabbing. After cocaine, the violence intensified, resulting in shootouts with high-powered guns with other gangs and the police. During the late 1980s and early 1990s in Los Angeles, the war on drugs was in full swing and young black men were the targets. The lure of making money was appealing when it seemed like there was little else available. Leading up to this, many factories had shut down in the inner cities, which provided jobs to semi-skilled and unskilled workers. When the reliable and steady jobs disappeared for both the parents and their children, who would eventually follow them into these jobs, one of the viable avenues became the emerging drug trade. This was coupled with pioneering black style writers not having a larger art scene in Los Angeles to turn to. In the early 1980s, New York style writers had interest from art collectors and wealthy patrons to paint their work on canvases, although this was still an imperfect arrangement. A few years after New York style writing and graffiti art hit Los Angeles by 1987, street gangs, drug trafficking, and violence in the streets exploded. At the time, there was little evidence that style writing and graffiti art would make money in the future. For those who stayed out of street gangs and didn't stick with style writing, hip-hop offered another vehicle in the form of rapping. This proved to be a more viable alternative. As a result, the presence of black style writing and graffiti writers diminished in the style writing community. Cre8 speaks about his own experience with being one of the few black faces still painting on the yard.